Welcome back to Martial Arts in Chinese Literature and Films. In the other lecture video assigned for this week, I provided a basic introduction of China's century of humiliation and modern Chinese history. In this lecture, we'll focus on the special cultural significance of martial arts as related to this history, and the reflection of the theme of national humiliation in Bruce Lee's classic film Fist of Fury, 精武门. We have mentioned that China's century of humiliation began after Qing China's defeat by British warships during the First Opium War of 1839 to 1842. Backwardness in military technology was a main reason why Qing China lost the war. The loss in the First Opium War thus generated significant shifts in Chinese perceptions of military power. The event began to unsettle the dominance of Wen over Wu as a cultural value. Whereas many late Qing intellectuals continue to treat Wen as a supreme value, the development of modern military technology became a pressing issue at the Qing court for the purpose of defending national sovereignty. Still later, along with the deepening of the national crisis, Chinese intellectuals began to reject traditional values and embrace modern Western ideas. This trend gave rise to the New Culture movement of the 1910s and 1920s. In the context of war and foreign aggressions, one prominent intellectual trend on the rise at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries was social Darwinism. In the West, social Darwinism was advocated in the 1860s and 1870s by British intellectuals such as Thomas Henry Huxley and Herbert Spencer. In general, proponents of social Darwinism intersected biology, anthropology, sociology, and philosophy, and argued applied Darwin's theory of natural selection to the evolution of social groups or individuals. In hindsight, scholars today see the development of social Darwinism during the late 19th and early 20th centuries as a deeply conservative and rather disturbing intellectual trend towards the promotion of racism, Western imperialism, and colonialism. The idea of the survival of the fittest, a phrase coined by Herbert Spencer, was used to justify colonization and the doctrine of white supremacy. This is why social Darwinism has been repudiated in Western scholarship today. However, in the context of late Qing and early Republican China, social Darwinism was widely embraced by Chinese intellectuals following Yan Fu's tremendously influential translation of Huxley's Evolution and Ethics under the title 天演论, literally a treatise on natural evolutions or heavenly evolutions, in 1897. Yan-Fu's translation came out during some of the darkest moments in China's century of humiliation, right after Qing China's terrible defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War, or Jiawu Zhanzhen, between 1894 and 1895. The unequal treaty Ma Guan Tiaoyue, or Treaty of Shimonoseki, signed after the war, contained the most damaging terms to Qing China yet, and marked a qualitative escalation of China's national crisis. Indeed, around this point, the idea of the destruction of the nation and the extinction of the race, 亡国灭种, became a widely shared concern among Chinese intellectuals. Yan-Fu was a leading intellectual figure propagating this anxiety regarding the ongoing national crisis. In his translation of Huxley's Evolution and Ethics, the notions of natural selection and survival of the fittest in social Darwinism are elegantly and effectively rendered into the Chinese phrase 物竞天择,适者生存, literally, things compete and heaven or nature selects. Those that the fittest shall survive. This phrase remains well known today. Yan-Fu's translation draws a direct connection between natural selection and national and racial survival. Underlying this imperative of becoming fit for the purpose of survival was the urgency to strengthen the national power in a viciously competitive global space. By this point, Chinese society started to witness a thorough ideological reversal of the hierarchy between Wen and Wu. As Chinese intellectuals began to abandon or demote traditional values associated with moral and literary cultivation in the culture of Wen, and promote utilitarian real-world objectives, in particular development of the military force, science and technology, and an industrial economy. This reversal between idealist and realist values, or between the values of Wen and Wu, marks one of the most fundamental ideological breaks between traditional and modern China. In connection with this ideological break, the Chinese intellectuals' perception of China's position in the world also experienced a paradigm shift. Previously, we have introduced the concept of all under heaven or Tianxia in the traditional Chinese worldview. According to this traditional worldview, the Emperor of China possesses a universal authority as the Son of Heaven, and all foreign nations are the so-called tributary nations subordinate to the Emperor of China or the celestial court, Tianchao. For the most part in traditional Chinese history, this sinocentric vision of the world was ritualistic, whereas outward expansion and conquests took place during certain periods in Chinese history. Traditional imperial politics remained largely inward-looking. It should also be noted that China was in fact repeatedly conquered by non-Han Chinese rulers, most prominently Mongol rulers during the Yuan dynasty and Manchu rulers during the Qing dynasty. Interestingly, these non-Han dynasties all sustained the sinocentric worldview. However, through the reform and revolution of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Chinese intellectuals pursuing modernity found it necessary to embrace a fully different model of the world, that is, as 世界, or a globe consisted of competing nations. This new global vision went hand in hand with Yan-Fu's theory about social Darwinism and national survival, as well as the reversed Wen-Wu relations in Chinese culture during this time. Throughout these seismic changes, martial arts, both in terms of its actual practice and its cultural image, took on a special significance. Firstly, in a practical sense, martial arts lost its significance as a fighting technique in a new era of warfare dominated by modern weapons such as guns and cannons. Yet, as a form to cultivate Wu powers, it's aligned with the spirit of the survival of the fittest and the goal to strengthening the national power, which is correlated with the power of the individual body. Furthermore, as China's past was rapidly vanishing under foreign incursions, martial arts emerged as a token of a distinctive Chinese national identity and cultural heritage. In all these ways, the cultural image of martial arts gained currency at the cusp of China's paradigm shift from tradition to modernity. The rich cultural and historical connotations assumed by martial arts during China's century of humiliation continue to inform representations of the theme in Chinese culture up to today. As examples, let's briefly look at two cases in this lecture: the Boxer Rebellion or 义和团运动 of 1900 and the folk memory surrounding the martial arts master Huo Yuanjia, which is the direct source of Bruce Lee's film Fist of Fury. The Boxer Rebellion refers to the large-scale peasant uprising of 1900. The peasants involved in this uprising belonged to martial arts societies, which characterized their practice as the righteous and harmonious fists, 义和拳. Members of these societies were disfranchised peasants angry at the permeating foreign influences within China, such as the spread of Christianity. The Boxer Uprising involved elements of folk religion or superstition underlying the cultural tradition of martial arts. For instance, martial arts training over a long time could help one develop a stronger endurance against physical attacks by fists or even weapons. Yet, boxers of the time might go as far as to believe that such training could enable them to fend off bullets, or could endow them with divine protection or inspiration. There was thus a tragic clash between the martial arts tradition and modern military technology, and we may see reflections of this historical clash in martial arts films such as Once Upon a Time in China, Huang Fei Hong. Now let's go back to the history of the Boxer Rebellion itself. Initially, the Qing court under Empress Dowager Cixi supported the Boxers' anti-foreign movement. Encouraged by the Qing government, the Boxers' anti-foreign activities became violent and indiscriminate, sometimes leading to the slaughtering of Christian missionaries and their Chinese converts. In June 1900, the uprising escalated into a besiegement of and attacks against the foreign embassies and churches in Beijing. In retaliation of the Boxer Uprising, several foreign powers formed a joint army known as the Eight-Nation Alliance, 八国联军. The nations involved were Germany, Japan, Russia, Britain, France, the United States, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. In August, the Alliance Army occupied Beijing, forcing Empress Dowager Cixi and the imperial court to run away from the Forbidden City. In fear of foreign retaliation, Empress Dowager Cixi changed her policy and ordered the Qing army to ruthlessly crack down the Boxers. Meanwhile, some branches of the Eight-Nation Joint Army committed atrocities including looting and even massacres in various regions across China. Numerous Boxers and Chinese civilians lost their lives in this aftermath. The Boxer Uprising and its aftermath was one of the darkest chapters in China's encounter with the West. Recently, this history is retold through Jinmen Yan's two-volume graphic novel, Boxers, Saints, which depicts this troubled past through the perspectives of a young boy who grew to be a boxer and a young girl who became a Christian convert. The book is a nuanced and poignant representation of this history, and I highly recommend it. For our purpose, the Boxer Rebellion exemplifies the tragic clash between the martial arts tradition and the aggressive force of modernity. On a broader scale, it's indicative of the conflict between China's past way of life and the new global order forged through the modern West's technological advancement, but also its predatory imperialism and capitalism. As mentioned, we'll sense evocations of this history in modern martial arts films. Our other example is the direct background of Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury, which portrays the drive of Chen Zhen, the Bruce Lee character, to revenge the death of his master Huo Yuanjia, who was poisoned by Japanese occupants in early 20th century China. This whole story has its roots in stories and ideas that circulated in some earlier sources. However, in terms of modern Chinese popular culture, Bruce Lee's film is the ultimate source that cemented the legendary image of Huo Yuanjia and his martial arts school, as well as the theme of national humiliation characterized by the phrase "sick man of East Asia," 东亚病夫. First of all, Huo Yuanjia was a martial artist active in Tianjin, a northern city near Beijing, and later Shanghai in late Qing China. According to newspapers from the period, it seems that Huo Yuanjia became known for accepting the open challenges of Western wrestlers. Details on what happened remain vague, and it's questionable if these fights took place. Between 1909 and 1910, Huo Yuanjia founded a martial arts school named Jingwu, literally the essence of Wu, in Shanghai, which was then occupied by various foreign powers, including Imperial Japan. Shortly after the founding of the martial arts school, he passed away in his 40s. Even though it might be possible he died of illness, in some stories published about him during the 1910s, we start to see the theory he was poisoned by Japanese occupants. Another folk memory associated with Huo Yuanjia is the phrase "sick man of East Asia," 东亚病夫. The precise origin of this phrase is unclear, but it could have emerged from English language writings in the late 19th century on the Chinese people and other Asian peoples from an imperialist point of view. In the 1900s, Chinese reformers and revolutionaries translated the phrase into 东亚病夫 for the purpose of stimulating nationalist sentiments against foreign humiliation and incursions. In accounts about Huo Yuanjia, it's been said that one of the foreign wrestlers humiliated the Chinese people with the phrase "sick man of East Asia," which provoked the martial artist Huo Yuanjia to respond to his challenge. Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury, 精武门, made in 1972 with a Hong Kong studio, is a major development of the folk stories about Huo Yuanjia. The film creates the fictional character Chen Zhen, Huo Yuanjia's dedicated disciple, who is played by Bruce Lee. The most iconic scenes in this film are about the national humiliation experienced by the Chinese people under foreign occupation during the early 20th century. First, the sign "Sick Man of East Asia," taunted by members of a Japanese dojo in Shanghai to humiliate Huo Yuanjia's disciples. Later, we see how the Bruce Lee character Chen Zhen torn it to pieces and forced his opponents to literally eat their words. Another equally famous scene is Chen Zhen's destruction of another humiliating sign with his high kicks. This sign is in front of a park open only to foreigners, bearing the words "No dogs and Chinese allowed," 狗与华人不得入内. There have been some debates whether this type of sign actually existed in early 20th century China, but its presentation in the park scene in the film Fist of Fury became the best-known image about China's century of humiliation in modern Chinese popular culture. Set within these scenes about the national humiliation, Chen Zhen's revenge for his master symbolizes a national revenge. All in all, the film Fist of Fury is a must-see film for understanding the development of Chinese nationalism through popular cultural representations. On a theoretical level, we may characterize the film as a post-colonial film, since it represents national experiences following a history with Western imperialism and colonization, as what happened to many places around the globe during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Later on, in both Hong Kong and mainland China, from the 1980s to the 2000s, Bruce Lee's Fist of Fury inspired a number of influential TV dramas and films based on Huo Yuanjia and his martial arts school. In many ways, the images and themes generated by the film became an iconic part of modern Chinese popular culture. In the context of our class, we can observe both continuities and discontinuities between Bruce Lee's character Chen Zhen and traditional martial arts fighters or Xia characters. I look forward to your responses in this regard. Finally, we should briefly discuss Bruce Lee's transnational life and career. There are many biographies or documentaries about him in both English and Chinese, as he's one of the most legendary figures in modern popular culture, globally speaking. Here, we may focus on his own complex national and racial identity and how it might have informed his cinematic images and his martial arts philosophy embodied by the "be like water" remark. Bruce Lee was born in 1940, and he tragically passed away at the age of 32 in 1973 due to a mysterious illness. The precise cause of his death is still a matter of debate. His birthplace was the Chinatown of San Francisco, although he returned to Hong Kong with his parents when he was 3 months old. Bruce Lee's original name was Li Zhenfan. Later, he adopted Li Xiaolong, the Little Dragon, as his artist name, since he was born in the year of the dragon, according to the Chinese zodiac. Bruce Lee's father was a well-known actor of traditional Cantonese theater, and Bruce Lee himself started to appear in his father's films shortly after he was born. Another interesting fact about Bruce Lee is that his mother came from a privileged interracial family based in Hong Kong. Her uncle was Sir Robert He Tong, Chinese name is He Dong, a legendary businessman and a philanthropist whose father was a Dutch Jew and whose mother was Han Chinese. Bruce Lee thus had a mixed heritage. Bruce Lee got into street fights since he was young and began to learn martial arts since he was 7. When he was 15, he became a student of the legendary martial artist Ip Man Ye Wen, founder of the Wing Chun fist fighting. Bruce Lee also learned many different fighting styles, including Western boxing. In 1959, to prevent him from getting into trouble with local gangs, his family sent him to the United States. He became a college student at the University of Washington and studied drama and philosophy there. Yet he dropped college in 1964 and moved to Oakland to start a martial arts studio. In the US, Bruce Lee experienced racial tensions on different sides. According to Lee himself, shortly after he opened his Oakland studio in 1964, he received strong objections from Chinese martial arts fighters of the area for teaching non-Chinese students. Bruce Lee refused to limit his students to only those of Chinese heritage, and had to eventually settle his difference with the other martial artists through a fight. If we believe Lee's account, which has been denied by his opponents in this fight, he was breaking racial boundaries through his martial arts in the racially fraught atmosphere of the 1960s. On the other hand, when trying to develop his acting career, Lee encountered glass ceilings in the American entertainment industry, dominated by white actors. Lee did land in a few supporting roles, the most popular of which is his role as the assistant Kato in The Green Hornet. Despite his much more superior fighting skills, Lee could only literally act as a sidekick. In 1967, Lee opened his own martial arts studio in Los Angeles and started to name his own style of fighting Jeet Kune Do, Jie Quan Dao, the intercepting fist. The emblem of his martial arts school mirrors that of the Taiji symbol in Taoism, and the Chinese characters around this symbol read, using no way as way, 以无法为有法, and having no limitation as limitation, 以无限为有限. With this Taoism-inspired philosophy, Bruce Lee aimed to break rigid martial arts forms and incorporate all useful elements of the fighting styles he had learned, regardless of cultural origins. He called this the style of no style, and the philosophy of this fighting style is certainly reflected in his "be like water" remark during the famous Last Interview of 1971. Likely, Bruce Lee came to this martial arts philosophy in relation to his cross-cultural identity and experiences with discrimination on different sides. During this period, Bruce Lee also made a name for himself in the global martial arts circle by the legendary demonstration of his skills at the Long Beach International Karate Championships in 1964, including two-finger push-ups. However, due to the barriers confronting his acting career in the US, Lee returned to Hong Kong and began to act in leading roles in the films that turned him into a global legend. Between 1971 and his untimely death in 1973, Lee made 5 films with Hong Kong filmmakers, including The Big Boss, 唐山大兄, Fist of Fury, 精武门, Way of the Dragon, 猛龙过江, and 2 films released after his death, Enter the Dragon, 龙争虎斗, and Game of Death, 死亡游戏. These films shattered box office records in Hong Kong and found tremendous success in the US, turning Lee into the first non-white action superstar. For the racial barriers he broke both on and off screen, Lee became a cultural icon, both in the Chinese-speaking world and globally. Bruce Lee shaped the modern martial arts film in fundamental ways and would inspire future stars from Jackie Chan to Stephen Chow. However, in these later embodiments of his art, we'll see a new development towards martial arts comedy, a form from which we shall see interesting resonances with the traditional Monkey King story and our theme of the power of emptiness.